think I'm waiting for YouTube to click in, guys. Facebook is already rolling.
Okay.
Give me just a second. It's weird to see myself in a delay. Okay, well, we are live. Hello, everybody. My name is TJ Terry. I work for Water's Edge Church, and really excited to sit down with you guys and talk today. I see that Jason Webster is on. Hello, Jason. How are you? I wanted to take the next 30 minutes, and as we were talking about as a team, the ways that we could try to provide care for the Hampton Roads community, for people that call Water's Edge Church home. One of the key things that came up was that we know that so many people that call Water's Edge Church home live in the Hampton Roads community, are small business owners, and by definition, we'd say, employers with less than 500 employees in this instance. And we wanted to take the opportunity to try and answer as many questions as possible, try to engage you guys in a dialogue about something that I know over the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, there's been a ton of confusion about, as well as a ton of misinformation, more than just confusion. And so as I learned a long time ago, it's better to know smart people than to be smart yourself. And so I reached out to one of our staff members whose mom is on with us, Michelle. And the benefit for me is I get the chance to be the party host, guys. I don't necessarily have to be the expert. I'm fortunate that I have Michelle on the call with me. But what we're going to try to do for the next 30 minutes is introduce ourselves. Michelle's going to go through what we really think is some of the most important information with regards to the CARES Act, and really the key element in the CARES Act, which is the Paycheck Protection Program. I hear it called the PPP. But we're going to go through that, focus in on it, and then we'd love to create an opportunity at the back end for you guys to ask any questions that you've got. And for what it's worth, if we don't get to your questions, we will, if you keep putting them in the comments, then we'll work to follow up with you guys later on at the same time too. So Michelle, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. Let us know a little bit about you, and then feel free to jump in. And as comments come, obviously I will share those. So.
Okay, thank you, TJ. I really appreciate that. I attend the Williamsburg campus, and I am a CPA here locally in Williamsburg. I'm part owner of a mid-sized firm. So we've been in the trenches now for a couple weeks trying to figure out all these different programs that are available. As TJ said, we're talking about the CARES Act right now, but we're mainly going to concentrate on the Paycheck Protection Program. There's also the Economic Injury Disaster Loan and also the Economic Injury Grant. But those are two other pieces of the CARES Act that we're going to go ahead and not be part of this program at this time, because the PPP program is, I think, the most important for our small businesses. Well, I'm just going to give you a kind of an overview of that. It's a direct incentive for small businesses to keep workers on payroll. So that's what the president wanted to do. He wanted to make sure that there's funds available to go ahead and continue to pay employees. That's the main purpose of the PP program. The loan actually will pay for 2 months of the average of their 2019 payroll costs, plus an additional 25% to cover expenses like rent and utilities. The SBA will forgive the loan if all of the employees are kept on payroll for 8 weeks and the money is used for payroll, rent, or utilities. There's no collateral or personal guarantees that are required for this loan, which is wonderful. And also the loan payments can be deferred for 6 months. Lenders can begin processing the applications as soon as April 3rd. So I'm sure there's probably some of you all out there that have already started processing your loans. Self-employed individuals actually aren't supposed to apply until April 10th. So tomorrow is the date for y'all to start applying. And the program will be available through June 30th. However, the big kicker to the June 30th date is that once the money's gone, it's gone. So that means that if the money runs out next week, no more funds are going to become available unless they come back with more funds later on. Okay, let's talk about who's eligible for the PPP. Business and entities in operation as of February 15th, 2020 are eligible. They have to be a small business concern, such as a 50c3 nonprofit, a 501c9 veterans organization, tribal business concerns. And they have to have fewer than 500 employees. So individuals who operate as sole proprietors or independent contractors and eligible self-employed individuals as well. You can also have affiliation rules that are waived for business concerns operating as a franchise that is assigned to a franchise identifier code by the administration. Those are kind of more of the technical things, but basically it's going to be your small businesses with fewer than 500 employees are going to be able to apply for these loans. Let's talk about what are the eligible expenses. Payroll costs, that's the biggest eligible expense there. You can also include costs related to group health insurance during the periods of sick, medical, family leave, and any insurance premiums. You can include employees' salaries, commissions, or similar compensation. You can also include payments of interest or any mortgage obligations, rent, utilities, and interest on any debt that was incurred before the covered period. Who qualifies for these payroll costs? Well, I guess it would be payroll costs for employees for sure. Those are people that are on salary, wages, commissions, payment for vacation, parental leave, family leave, medical and sick leave, allowance for separation or dismissal, payment for state and local taxes assessed on the compensation of employees. Pretty much the only thing that we can determine that category fills is your state unemployment taxes. So make sure that when you're filling out your application, you can include those state unemployment taxes as well. Then you can also include your group health coverage, including insurance premiums and retirement. Remember that out of all those costs in there, that you have to have 75% of those costs have to come from payroll. If 75% of those costs don't come from payroll expenses, then it's not all going to be forgiven. The other 25% can come from your utilities and your rent and your mortgage interest. A lot of people have asked about what about independent contractors? Your independent contractors are not going to actually be included in that because they can actually apply on their own. So even though the application says independent contractors, I don't believe that they're going to give you the money for your independent contractors. Okay, what's excluded? There's some things that are excluded. The Act expressly excludes salary over $100,000. So if you've got somebody that is making over $100,000, they're not going to be able to include anything over the $100,000. But again, remember, the $100,000 does not include health insurance payments or retirement plan contributions. So if you have an owner that's making over $100,000, please make sure to include the health insurance and the retirement plan contributions that they're actually putting in for. The other thing that's excluded is that if you had qualified sick and family leave wages for which you got a credit for under the other information that the IRS came up with earlier. So if you've gone and you're going to use that credit for those wages because somebody is out because they're sick or they're out because they have to take care of their child and you're getting a credit for those wages, they will not be allowed to be excluded and for this PPP loan. Federal employment taxes are also not included. So federal unemployment, FICA, Medicare taxes, those are not going to be excluded. And so you will not be able to get a loan for those. I've had people ask me, can you get multiple loans? No, you can only get one. So you're not going to be able to go out there and apply and then say, oh, by the way, I want to apply again. That's not going to be allowed. Now, that does not mean that if you have multiple businesses that you couldn't apply under each and every one of those businesses, because each of those businesses are a separate entity and they can apply for their own separate loan. So business owners, let's get some of the key elements again. Let's go back over that. Business owners can get 2.5 times their average monthly payroll, up to $10 million, and they may qualify for loan forgiveness and not have to pay it back. This is an excellent program to keep your people on payroll. Let's talk about how you calculate it, okay? The calculation for the maximum amount that you can borrow is aggregate payroll costs. For basically what we're just telling our clients to take is aggregate payroll costs for the last 12 months. If your place of business is in the United States, subtract any compensation in excess of the $100,000, take that amount and divide it by 12 and times it by 2.5. You do the same thing with your health insurance, your state unemployment, and also your retirement plan contributions. And then come up with a total there, and then you can go ahead and apply for that amount. Okay, how do you go ahead and apply for the loan? There actually is a direct link on the SBA website. You can go to the SBA website and download the application, but you're going to have to work with a bank. So having a bank you're going to have to apply with that application through a bank. I will tell you right now, we've already found out that Wells Fargo is no longer taking applications. They've already met their quota. So there are some banks out there that may not be able to even take your application. I'd start with your bank that you are locally or that you're banking with, as long as it's not Wells Fargo, and look to them first. Okay, what are you going to need when you apply for the loan? You go ahead and fill out the application. You're also going to need to submit with that. You're going to need to provide payroll documentation for 2019. You also may need to include your last year's federal income tax return. They say that 2018 is okay because they know that some people don't have their 2019 returns available yet. You need your copy of your 1099 miscellaneous for your contractors, payroll reports for the full year by employee, because they're going to want to see how many employees you have. And also, there is also an opportunity that if you did pay more payroll in January and February, they're allowing you to use the March through February of 2020 instead of the whole year of 2019. So if you have a jump in payroll for January and February, it might be a better opportunity to go ahead and use those last 2 months or these last couple months as your calendar year versus the January to January. Now, I know that TJ's already been through the process and he's had a really good experience. And I just want to pass it back to TJ to have him talk about how it went for him.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Michelle. And again, I can't thank you enough for the expertise, having the chance to do this just for ourselves and get some guidance from some larger church organizations was a helpful part of the process. But knowing that you've had the chance to work with multiple of your clients through this process and the lessons learned are key too. And before I jump into our experience, I just want to reinforce a couple things that Michelle mentioned. But there are 3 primary programs that are being discussed as a part of the C.A.R.E.S Act, and Michelle talked about them. But the PPP, the Paycheck or Payroll Protection Program, the EIDL, and I know it's Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Is that what it is? Is that what
That's correct?
Yeah. I've gotten to just calling it the EIDL because I always have to figure out what the D stands for. But and then the third is really like a small business debt relief loan, and the small business debt relief that's not just a part of C.A.R.E.S. That exists. I think that exists broadly speaking. But I heard some misinformation early on. I just want to follow up with what Michelle said and reinforce it. But the EIDL and the PPP are an either or, not an and. You can apply for the EIDL, and if that's given, that amount would be subtracted from what you would apply for the payroll protection program. Is that right, Michelle?
That's correct.
Yeah. And if you apply for the small business debt relief, that would be a loan. That's a low interest loan, but that would be a loan. There aren't circumstances by which that debt would become a grant or would be relieved from indebtedness, right? That would eventually require you to repay. The interest on the PPP is 1%, right?
That's correct, for 2 years.
Yeah, for 2 years. And that's universal. That's not based on credit. That's not based on equity. That's not based on anything. It's 1% for everybody. And like you said, there's a 6-month deferment option as you incur these expenses. And from what I understand, as long as the qualified expenses that you mentioned are used in that 75% to 25% ratio, then it's not an if the debt will be forgiven. It's that the debt would be forgiven. Is that correct?
That's correct, as long as it's done in an 8 weeks period.
Yeah. So as long as that money is used in that 8-week period, then there's not a question mark as to whether or not the issuing bank would be able to relieve that indebtedness. It's just how it works. So our experience, one, we spent a ton of time last week paying attention to when things were going. And to be honest, if you asked our bank, which is First Atlantic, they were awesome in this. I was bugging them. So last Monday, I was bugging them on Tuesday and Thursday. And I see that Karen's on here. She can confirm that we were messing with them quite a bit. And then Thursday, I said, hey, I heard that tomorrow's the day. And then we reached out Friday morning. And so we didn't wait for the bank to pursue us. We pursued them. And we wanted to make sure that we didn't run the risk of funds that were being allocated were already allocated to others before we got the chance to participate. And so we jumped on it fast. I mentioned this to Michelle before we jumped into this whole conversation, but we've had a pre-existing great relationship with our bank. We meet with them not regularly, but at least once a quarter. They check in, we check in. We've established a really strong relationship. And that was an important part of, I think, what helped us move through the process easier. I think another huge part of the experience is I'm so thankful that I have Karen. If you don't know Karen on our staff, she gets the chance to commit almost her full energy to making sure that we are a financially sound organization. And so when it came to pulling the paperwork that Michelle mentioned, looking at last year's payroll, taking that number with what it's an included expense, dividing it by 12, multiplying by 2.5, that for us, it took a little effort, but it was fairly easy. I know lots of you out there as small business owners, that's you too. You're not only running your business, but you're running the finance for the business. What I will say is the more tied up your numbers are, the better they are tied up, and you've got the supporting documentation to present, I think the easier your process will be. I love the fact that when we submitted on Friday, there were 2 questions that came back to us on Monday, and really by Tuesday at noon, we benefited from being able to be approved for that. For the PPP. And again, I attribute a lot of that to a great relationship with the bank, pursuing the bank, don't let them pursue you, and making sure that all of the information that they're asking of you, you present at the same time too. I will say that even though the information that Michelle shared is what's posted on the SBA site, I know some banks will ask for different information. So even our bank asked for a few things different than we expected as a part of the SBA loan. Nothing crazy, but it aligned with what the expectation was. But they wanted to make sure that they could use our information to run their calculation alongside of the one that we presented in the application too. Because when you present the application, you do present the number that you believe is a qualified number for the loan itself. And I know they double checked that with us providing with the supporting the employee level detail with regards to the payroll at the same time too. So from talking to Michelle, I know that us getting in early, us being prepared, and us pursuing the bank were huge steps in our experience being a fairly quick one. But I would definitely say if you're watching this video, or if you're watching this video now, or you're watching it later on, and you're questioning whether or not you should do this, my encouragement to you would be to pursue it. And like Michelle said, if the bank that you work with is full, has already received all the applications, and then create a relationship with another local bank. This could be a huge financial benefit for you, for your employees, for your business as a whole. And I'll just say one other piece too, and then I'll stop so we can take some Q&A if anybody has questions. We as a church, we have the financial benefit because of so many great givers as a part of the community, that we aren't in a desperate situation. We've had committed givers even this week jumping in, even though we're not meeting physically on Sundays, making sure that financially we're solid as a church. We are going to have to make investments over the next few months as a part of this process, that if we didn't consider taking in this loan, didn't consider benefiting from these funds, probably wouldn't hurt us today, might not hurt us tomorrow, might not hurt us the next day, but it could hurt us in the fall. What we've said all along is that this gives us the chance to supplement the loss of income and supplement the increase in expense in some cases, and make sure that we're the best church we can be when the doors open back up again. And so if you're a business out there and you're in a good financial situation, maybe you're carrying a little bit of a heavier burden, but you're wondering if this is worth the effort. Think about when the doors open back up and what type of business you want to be for your customers. This may be the opportunity to take as small of a hit as is possible, and continue to keep your employees employed throughout this difficult season at the same time too. And so I know a few of you have stated that you filed and hoping everything comes through. I will say, Michelle, unless there's anything else you want to reinforce, I'll just ask anybody to post in comments any questions they've got. We'd be happy to answer those. But anything based on what I said, you jump in to reinforce again too?
Yes, just the same thing that you already said, is that I do encourage that everybody apply, because it is a great benefit, and I think it will be worth your time to do the small bit of paperwork. I don't really think it's a large amount of paperwork to supply the information that's needed to get the loan. It's well worth it. And if you don't spend the money in the 8 weeks, again, it's going to turn into a loan at 1%. Where can you go out there and borrow any kind of money at 1%? So
I do have a question, Michelle. Will the money become taxable as income once it's forgiven?
I have heard that it's not taxable. I haven't heard anything different, that it's going to be taxed.
Great. Yeah. What other questions, guys? And I know there's really going back to the beginning, what are the primary filters? It's 500 or less employees, but it includes nonprofits, it includes for-profits. Is there any other filters on the business side as you're considering, other than the 500 employees, in terms of do I or do I not qualify?
Well, illegal businesses.
Okay, well, yeah, that makes sense.
Other than that, no, I don't know.
And then do you know what, as a self-employed individual, what some of the qualifications are? Is that just based on your tax status?
Yeah, I believe they're going to be using your self-employment income.
Okay.
That's what I've heard. They're going to ask you to supply either a profit and loss or your last year's tax return. That's your Schedule C.
Okay. And you mentioned it already. You don't have to have filed your taxes for this year to apply. You'll just use 2018's tax information to develop the basis for the loan, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. You will probably still have to provide a profit and loss for 19, just not your tax return.
Great.
We haven't gotten any of that information for our self-employed yet, because they can't really apply until tomorrow.
And that's probably another piece of good advice too, is if you got an hour and a half left in a banker's business day, and if you can get in before the doors open for self-employed individuals tomorrow, you've probably got a lot more room in that doorway as you're stepping through. So again, we may have one more. I came in late, heard about small business. Would you recommend for those who are starting out right now as independent contractors to apply for the small business loan?
Apply for the small business loan or the PPP program?
Yeah. Well, if the question is, I guess the question could be, do you recommend that an independent contractor that's just starting out, that's a self-employed individual by definition, apply for this loan, for the PPP?
They have to be in business as of February 15th. So as long
Okay.
as they were in business by February 15th, then yes.
Yep. And if they're a self-employed individual, their cost basis is what they pay themselves.
Correct.
Yeah. Yes. So as long as you're Sydney, as long as you were an independent, identified as a self-employed individual prior to, you said February 15th.
Yes, I believe it's February 15th.
Then it would be to your advantage. I'd have to assume as an independent contractor, a self-employed individual, the financial situation is tight. It's difficult right now, and so
Yeah.
this would be a great way to carry the next 8 weeks and try and maintain some semblance of normalcy with regards to your financial situation. It would be a very good idea. So. Well, we got 5 minutes left, guys. Michelle and I love talking, so we can come up with other stuff. I can figure out what we're going to have for dinner tonight. But if separately and 6 feet apart, obviously. But if there's any other questions that you guys have, we're happy to answer them. I mentioned this earlier, but I'll say it again. If the video's done, or you're watching this later tonight, or you're watching this tomorrow or next week, and there's questions, feel free to put comments in Facebook. And just let us know. And if we as Waters Edge Church don't have the answers, I'll reach out to Michelle and ask questions. And we really do want to try to put, hold on, I thought I just had another one. Hold on. So I think that question was already answered, but I'm not sure if I missed this, but, sorry. I'm not sure that I missed this, but what should a sole proprietor do right now? That's the question.
What should a sole proprietor do right now?
Yeah.
They should go ahead and get the application off the SBA website, and then find, if you have a local bank, use your local bank to see if you can go ahead and start applying now.
There you go. Yeah. So move quick. That's the answer. Move quick.
Yeah,
I got another one too. Likelihood of the C.A.R.E.S fund being approved. I actually don't know what that is off the top of my head. Do you know what that is, Michelle?
I haven't heard that one.
Well, Amber, I think the answer is we aren't sure.
We can get back with you.
Yeah, but we can get back with you on that. If that's an additional fund above and beyond what the C.A.R.E.S Act, then we will do our best to try to get back with you and get some information there. So, well, I'll just say this with 3 minutes left, unless anything else comes through. I really appreciate it, Michelle. I appreciate the time to jump on. I appreciate the willingness to put your name to this. Oh gosh, you may know someone, really quick, I'll pause, but there's someone named Gregory Calhoun who's so glad that they have an excellent CPA during these confusing times. I'm not sure if you know who they are. They sound familiar. But I can't thank you enough for coming on. Whenever I asked Tiana I thought you'd be able to jump on for me, or with me, she didn't come back really fast. And so the next day she said, "Hey, did I answer you whether or not, my mom could join you?" And I said, "No, you didn't," smiley face. And I was for a second, because I'm happy to jump into what I know, but it's so important to have wisdom beyond your own experience. And so I'm so thankful to have had you on here. And again, guys, if you want to send more questions, you can even email info@watersedgechurch.net. We'll do our best to answer those for you. But really appreciate your time. And for those of you who are able to join us, thanks so much for watching.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah.